Good evening, everyone. This is Ravi Ramamurthy from the Center for Emerging Markets at Northeastern University. Welcome to our Spring 2022 edition of the India Lecture Series, sponsored by Vivek and Vandana Sharma. We are delighted today to have Dr. Sam Satyam Pitroda as our featured speaker. Many of you will know that Sam has been an influential policymaker, inventor, and entrepreneur. Really, he's done extraordinary work on all three fronts in the course of his lifetime. He's credited with having laid the foundation for India's technology revolution, especially in telecom. In the 1980s, when he was an advisor to the Prime Minister with cabinet rank, he has many inventions to his credit, including, I thought this was very interesting, the electronic diary, which we all use in some form today, and the mobile wallet, which is also something which has become very popular in these days. He also created a venture called CSAM Inc., which he sold to Mastercard in 2013. But probably the work that many of us from my generation remember is the reforms that Sam helped to bring about in the telecom sector, the revolution in cellular telephony that has now reached every nook and corner of India. In many ways, the foundation for that was laid in by the work that Sam did. If you haven't had a chance to read his Harvard Business Review article that we put a link to on the event page, please do so, because I think it tells in very interesting form the journey that Sam went through, starting from his very humble origins in Odisha, from a large and poor family, and then found his way to the United States. And as he said, he was inventing telephone switches before he really was even a user of telephone switches growing up in India. And then went back several times to help influence the policy, in fact, take on very active engagement in trying to build the institutions to transfer technology, to create companies that could really, had they been allowed to go in the same trajectory that they were on, could have become the Huawei's of India. Anyway, I could go on and on, but I'm going to stop. Today, Sam is going to talk about his own journey, culminating with his most recent book called Redesign the World, a global call to action. So with that, Sam Pitroda, welcome to Northeastern University and the Center for Emerging Markets. We are delighted to have you. We look forward to your remarks. Take it away.
Thank you, Dr. Ramamurthy. Ladies and gentlemen, greetings from Chicago. It is indeed a special honor and privilege for me to be with you. I thank Dr. Ramamurthy for the opportunity. And as he suggested, I will talk a little bit about sort of my journey and then focus on the book, Redesign the World. I'll take about 20-25 minutes so we can have more time for interaction. I was born in British Raj in 1942 in a small little tribal village in Orissa, India. We were 8 in the family, 5 sisters and 3 brothers. My father had 4th grade education. And when India became independent, my father felt empowered, like millions and millions of others. He felt that now he would like to send all his children to college, school, educate them. And they will not have the feeling that he had, where he felt inadequate in front of Englishmen. He used to tell us stories that he would go to sell nails to Englishmen and he couldn't communicate. So whatever money they gave him, he took it and came home. And independence had a huge impact on his mindset. And he was not the only one. Millions and millions all over the world after India, when world got sort of decolonized, everyone felt like that. Because colonization in the human history, like slavery, was something only those who lived through understand the implications of. We had no school in the village, and we were from Gujarat. My father came looking for work in Orissa. So he sent us to a boarding school in Gujarat, where Sardar Patel was born in Karamsad. So my brother and I, when I was about little over 9-year-old, and my older brother was 12-year-old, were sent to a boarding school. And there we learned the Gandhian way of life. In our poor family home, we had 5 big photographs, pictures of Gandhi, Nehru, Patel, Subhash Chandra Bose, and Maulana Azad. We grew up in a neighborhood where right in front of our house was Muslim. Next to it was Sikh family, Sardar. Next to it was Marwari Jain. And in the back was tribal Oriya. We all lived together in peace and harmony. And inclusion was very much part of our growing up. In school, we learned more about discipline, truth, trust, diversity, justice, democracy. And in those days, the fervor was very different. It was all about Gandhian ideas, rooted in our thinking. I went to school there and then went to high school in Baroda, rented a home, apartment. My brother and I were 1,000 miles away from parents. So we knew that we have a huge responsibility because of the trust our parents have put in us. And we can't let that trust break in any way. So we did reasonably okay in studies. I liked physics, so I went to study physics. I had a BS in physics, master's in physics. And one fine morning, I read in the newspaper that President Kennedy has decided to take man onto the moon. I was young, energetic, a little bit stupid. I decided that I'm going to go to America. I had no idea of what going to America meant. I had no money, so I borrowed money and took a boat from Mumbai to Karachi to Aden to Egypt to Naples to Genoa, took a train from Genoa to London, took a plane from London to New York, and bus from New York to Chicago. This was in 1964. Landed up in a cold winter here, had no idea about anything. Went to Illinois Institute of Technology, wanted to get a PhD in physics, but learned that it takes 5 to 7 years. I had a girlfriend in India. So I asked my professor, what else can I do? My professor said, maybe you can get a master's in electrical engineering in 9 months. So I said, that's what I want to do. So I got my master's in electrical engineering. Those were the days of Vietnam. So everybody graduating from college got a job in defense industry at lots of big salaries. I also had this dream, but then I realized that being Gandhian, I'm not going to work in defense industry. I cannot do that. So I took a job for half the salary. My first salary was $550 a month in a non-defense television tuner industry. Started my life, earned enough money to call my girlfriend. She came here and we got married in 1966 and started life in Chicago. Chicago has been great to me. It is my home. I've been here for almost 58 years, raised my family, and by accident got into digital switching systems design for a company called General Telephone and Electronics, GTE. I was part of a small group of 4 people in R&D. Again, those were very early days of digital communication. Built switching systems. Finally, in 1974, started a business of my own, sold it to Rockwell International in 79, became head of Rockwell for telecom in Cedar Rapids, Chicago, and Dallas. And one fine day went to India to take my parents to see Taj Mahal and could not make a phone call to my wife. So a little bit of arrogance and a lot of ignorance said, I'm going to spend next 10 years to see if I can help connect India. I had never used telephone in my life before coming to America. I was too poor to have a telephone. And if somebody had a telephone, he was too rich to be my friend. It used to take 10 years to get a telephone connection, sometimes 20. So then I decided to spend some time looking for ways and means to make a contribution. Finally, luck would have it that I got to talk to Mrs. Indira Gandhi. And my message to her in 1980-81 was that telecom and IT would change the face of India. India needs to be connected. Then we had 2 million telephones for 650 million, 700 million people. In a short span of 30, 40 years, today India has 1.5 billion phones. India is a nation of connected billion. India also produces $200 billion worth of software export every year, year after year. This has given India a great deal of global recognition. Indian talent is all over the world in this field. You all know about it. And India has been able to collect a lot of wealth because of talent in IT. We have our own very big IT companies, global enterprises. All of that started with seeds that we planted in early 80s. The idea then was to focus on digitizing India's telecom network through indigenous product development, building human capacity, teaching people C++ kind of software, building local ancillary industry, and focusing on local production. It was very difficult in those days because all of these were wild ideas. Even privatization of telecom was a very big idea. We decided to computerize railway reservation, and we had huge resistance from labor. Finally, in telecom, we designed the products, but we realized that the bureaucracy would not allow us to build products and use it. So then I decided to take over as the head of telecom, set up a telecom commission, became first chairman of the telecom commission. Then we had 550,000 employees, 27 unions, and we had to work with all of this to build the institutions and infrastructure required for tomorrow. Then mobile telephony was analog. and we wanted to wait for GSM, and we were criticized for delaying it for a while. We delayed it, and when GSM became reality, we started privatizing telecom. And mobile was the key instrument to privatize. By then, we had corporatized MTNL and VSNL as a separate entity. And all of these were new ideas. To corporatize telecom was a huge deal in those days. Then we started designing our own supercomputer in a place in Pune, where we set up a center for development of advanced computing. Then I became head of not only telecom, but 5 technology missions: literacy, immunization, cooking oil, drinking water, IT, and we added finally milk production. All of the seeds we planted then helped us today in literacy, water. We are the largest producer of milk in the world. We eradicated polio vaccine. We are the largest producer of vaccines in the world, not polio. And lots of things happened. Then Rajiv Gandhi, Prime Minister, died. I ran out of money. I worked in India without salary for almost 10, 11 years. So I came back to US. By then, I had given up my nationality. I had become Indian citizen. So I had no visa to come back to US. So I came as a tourist, but I couldn't work as a tourist. So I restarted my life by starting a company, then set up a bank in London to privatize telecom world over, called WorldTel. I spent 7 years in London, going back and forth to privatize telecom in Africa, Latin America, and I did all of that work, which very few people know. Then when Dr. Manmohan Singh became Prime Minister, I decided to go back again to work on knowledge, became chairman of the National Knowledge Commission, innovation, became chairman of the National Innovation Council, and set up infrastructure required for the digital India. So set up National Knowledge Network to connect 1100 nodes to 40 gigabit bandwidth to connect all our universities, libraries, science and technology labs. And that network today provides the backbone for all of the digital India that we built or are building. Then also worked on fiber optics linked to all district headquarters, 650. In a sense, had an opportunity again to work for a decade. And then when we lost election, I decided to come back again to US to put my personal life in order. And then during COVID-19, I was locked up like many of us at home for 2.5 years. After about 2-3 months, I decided to write a book. And I realized that the world was last designed during World War II, just about the time I was born, 80 years ago. That design, led by US, gave birth to UN, World Bank, IMF, WTO, WHO, ultimately NATO. And that design was based on democracy, human rights, capitalism, consumption, and military. Then world was bipolar. You had US and you had Soviet Union. That design did pretty well. It improved longevity, lifted millions out of poverty. It provided sort of peace, but it didn't address the real challenges of hunger, violence, real poverty, and created huge amount of environmental blunders that we see today in terms of global warming. After that design, lots of things happen in the world. World got decolonized. China could rise to a level no one ever thought could rise. Soviet Union fell apart. Technology got democratized, became pervasive. Inequality increased world over. 9/11 changed perception in the world as to the fact that we are all interconnected, interwoven, interrelated, interdependent. And we now need a new global design. If we want to take humanity to the next level, we got to make use of hyperconnectivity. I have spent my life on hyperconnectivity. Hyperconnectivity is all about democratization of knowledge. It is about decentralization of decision-making and implementation. It is about demonetization of services. It is about communication, content, curation, and context. All of these new tools are having huge impact on everything we do. And we see it today on education, health, commerce, banking, governance. There is nothing that we know today which is not affected by hyperconnectivity. So what does hyperconnectivity mean to human civilization as we go forward? We are going through a very difficult time because of social media, which promotes lies, complicates our democracy, but I hope we will get over these hurdles. And we will use hyperconnectivity in a very different way to transform everything around us. So today you basically have two visions. You have American vision, and you see what is happening in Ukraine and the conference President Biden had on democracy with 100 countries. And the idea is to promote that vision going forward. And then you have a Chinese vision, which is based on Belt and Road Initiative. Both of these visions are rooted in command and control architecture. Both of these visions come from a national perspective and not a global perspective. What we need today is not focus on power and profit, but focus on planet and people. So the vision I have talks about inclusion, take democracy to inclusion, take human rights to human needs, because today we can produce anything. We got to decide what is that we want to produce. We live in an economy of surplus and not economy of scarcity. We want to take capitalism to new economy, which is based on decentralization, small and medium scale industries, networking to scale. And we want to move away from mindless consumption to conservation and sustainability. And finally, we got to think of a world which is non-violent. It is sad to see what is going on in Ukraine, irrespective of who is right and who is wrong. Innocent people are being killed, their homes are being destroyed, and that is just not acceptable in 2022, no matter what the reason is. So we need new institutions. We need to redefine our old institutions. We need change agents who demand that we redesign the world. And it's a very complex task. I thought I should write a book, not that I have all the answers, but at least if I could begin new conversation, maybe in 10, 15 years, something will happen. So with this, I don't take too much of our time, your time. I thought I stop here. And there are many more things to say about the book and redesign, but it's better to open up for a broader conversation now. Thank you, Dr. Ramamurthy.
Thank you, Dr. Pitroda. I'm going to start with some of the questions that have already come into the chat. These are not in any particular order. There's, I guess, a question here about how do these ideas relate to the UN's Sustainable Development Goals?
Well, Sustainable Development Goals are defined by a very close friend of mine, Jeffrey Shack. Jeffrey and I go a long way. It is a group of 17 ideas. Okay. But those goals are defined in the existing architecture. I'm talking about changing the basic architecture of UN, World Bank, IMF, NATO, WTO. Okay. I'm talking about creating new institutions to respond to the needs of tomorrow. I'm talking about using hyperconnectivity to achieve these 5 main goals and not 17. And 5 main goals are inclusion. We are not inclusive in our democracy. US is not inclusive, India is not inclusive, and non-democratic countries are also not inclusive. All conflicts in the world start because of exclusion. We don't have a global institution on inclusion. We talk about it, but we cannot deliver without right kind of political will and institutional framework. We want new economy. We want sustainability and conservation. Human rights are not good enough. We want to provide, human rights are not good enough. We want to provide human needs. So I'm saying, let's just focus on these 5 and not 17. Of course, all 17 are important. I agree with that. I think it's a good idea to have sustainable development goal. But then we had Millennium Development Goal. What happened to it? Nothing. Why didn't that happen? Because the institutional architecture is wrong.
Sam, I have not had a chance to read your book, I must confess, although I have it on order. But how do you envisage us getting from here to there? As you mentioned, the previous architecture was led by the US. It was a unique time when, in fact, the US was in a position to pretty much take a lead and be able to see it through. Today, who's going to do it?
Yeah, the problem today is those who have capacity to bring about generational change have no interest in change because they are milking the system. Why should they change? Those who have need to change have no voice in the system. The architecture is still based on colonial mindset, unfortunately. Okay. That's how they think. Everybody thinks in terms of power and profits. You need Gandhian approach to this. And that's why you need to think of planet and people first. You look at all the G8, G20 meetings, what happens there? It's a marketing gathering. People just make deals there. You go to World Economic Forum, all the rich and powerful make deals. It has nothing to do with what planet and people need. But that's what we value, unfortunately. So those who have to change have no interest in changing. So voice will have to come from the bottom. All we can do is have a new conversation. And hopefully some people will pick it up over a period of time.
I see. So you see change coming from the bottom up.
Absolutely. There is no way change will come from top down. Because why should they change? There's no reason for them to change. I mean, look at, we are talking about supplying more arms. Okay, I mean, that's the solution to Ukraine crisis. Okay. So everybody wants to escalate. Rather than saying, you need Mandela-Gandhian approach today. Okay. Somebody has to take the lead and say, look, this has to stop at any cost. We are not going to fuel this by supplying more arms. Okay, it is not good for the world. Okay, we are more civilized and we can sit across the table and iron out our differences. It doesn't matter who the other party is. But we can't create that kind of force. The force we create is to supply more arms. Fine, that's the solution we have selected and people love it. And media just gets onto it and media just amplifies that voice. And the voice of non-violence doesn't get the hearing.
I'm going to switch to another question. I mean, the questions are obviously on different topics. It's a question here about whether you were involved with the CIT Alcatel partnership to make telephones through ITI, Indian Telephone Industries.
No, when I got in there, that was already signed by Mrs. Gandhi and Mitterrand. I was opposed to it publicly. There were articles written in French magazine about my opposition. When Mitterrand came to India, we had a conversation on it, and I was basically blocking that. Okay, but whatever was signed, we respected it.
I see. Okay, there's another question here on whether you can comment on the dark side of connectivity in social media platforms and what are the implications for government and for regulation, both in India and outside.
Well, I think the social media today has a wrong business model from the perspective of the society. It may be a great business model for them, businessmen, because they make a lot more money if people have multiple presence and if people can add more clicks. So today, the basic problem in social media is that we have unauthenticated behavior and multiple registration. So when somebody says, I have 200 million on social media, you may really have 120 million, and 80 million are duplicates. People who are hiding behind something. And those are the people who create noise, because that's the unauthenticated behavior. I hope over a period of time, we will solve that. There's a small group set up globally, I'm part of it, to really understand the rights of the digital citizen. We understand human rights, but we don't understand the rights of the digital citizen. What does it mean to be a digital citizen? What does it mean to your residency, tax, loyalty? We are in the very early stages of all of this. I think it will get sorted out, but it will take time. So I'm very hopeful that we will get over this phase where we are amplifying lies, interfering in democracy. We have threats of cybersecurity. All of that hopefully will get eased out as we begin to understand a lot more about digital nationality. I am very hopeful.
I want to go back to the question I asked before, thinking about this grassroots process, how it might play out. If that process can work to bring about change, would it not have to work first at a country level within individual countries?
Well, I think today geographical borders don't mean much. Okay. Because a lot of this conversation takes place in digital domain. I could have a friend in England, in California, here, India, Africa, Paris, and we could have the same conversation. Okay. What we really need is change agents. We need large number of change agents who demand change. It's a slow process. It's a difficult process, but you got to begin somewhere. Okay. The first thing is to recognize that the architecture we have today is 80-year-old. In 80 years, we have not created one new global institutions of any substance, like UN, WHO. How do you expect us to solve the problem with the old architecture? I mean, today you take, for example, patents. How do you file a patent today? You still have national patents. I could file a patent in the US, but I got to file in PCT. I got to file in every country. I got to get a translation done. Some countries will say it is an invention. Other countries say it's not an invention. Come on, make up your mind. If it's an invention in one country, it has to be invention everywhere. You cannot have a global markets and local patents. One example. Same with currency. World works only on dollar. Okay. That's the dominant currency. Now, in a distributed architecture, you may have multiple currencies. So we have not created the architecture that we need for the future. And I can give you 10 examples like that. Okay.
There's a question here about whether hyperconnectivity also includes blockchain technology.
Oh, yeah. Of course, hyperconnectivity includes blockchain, sort of distributed architecture. It includes cryptos. It includes Web3. It includes all of that. Absolutely. And you see, the beauty of hyperconnectivity is that it empowers human beings. This thing is not a telephone. It is an instrument to empower a person. And that's why I'm sold on the idea of democracy, that every human being is going to be empowered to decide their own destiny. What I want to learn, how I want to learn, where do I want to go, is now completely in my control. It wasn't in my control. I'll give you one simple example. When I decided to come to America, I needed to know the courses offered by University of Illinois. Guess what it took to have access to a catalog? I had to take a train from Baroda, go to Mumbai, wait in a line early morning at US Embassy, US Information Service. They gave me a catalog to look at for half an hour, 15 minutes. With paper and pencil, I noted down the courses, and I had to take train back to Baroda. Information was controlled. Information was power. Now, I can go online and find out not about the courses, but about who is going to teach, that professor's background, professor's family. I can find out everything. A guy sitting in a small little village in Bihar can visit Guggenheim Museum. What does it mean? I think we have to ask those questions. You are empowering people, but you have old architecture. I mean, look at in India, on one hand, we are providing digital India. On the other hand, we have sort of institutions under control. We have authoritarian mindset. We are building exclusive society. And these two things don't go hand in hand. And that's the dichotomy we have to address. But then the fake news and because you control media, media only promotes only one side of the story. Okay. You cannot have digital India and weaker institutions. You cannot have digital India in media control. You cannot have digital India and not have role of civil society. That is the challenge for all of us.
Sam, do you have any thoughts on the China versus India story? Why has China been able to grow so fast?
It's very simple. It's very simple. Okay, I have a different view, but I can give you I'm not a management expert. You see, Chinese use their political architecture to provide cheap labor to American profit-making machine without any questions asked. So if you needed 100,000 laborer, Chinese political system could go out in villages, line up 100,000, put them in a bunker and say, you're going to work 10 hours a day and not ask any questions. You're not going to unionize. You will not have rights. India cannot do that because of being democracy. I remember a conversation having with a bunch of industrialists in Silicon Valley during Dr. Manmohan Singh's time. And I remember Nike or someone asked me a question saying, look, can you give us 10,000 workers in one city? I said, no, I can't guarantee that. So China can guarantee us. I said, then you have to go to China. Okay. So Chinese use that political architecture to provide cheap labor. And the Western mindset only focused on optimizing profit. And as a result, Jobs were lost back home here for 10 cents more profit. Now you have people who don't have jobs, but you have products, but nobody can buy. So Chinese growth has been basically in the back of world manufacturing machine that moved to China to increase profit. It's very simple. I don't think any other democratic country could do that.
Switching gears here, person wants to know how to motivate people to be as determined, hardworking, and brave as you are.
A lot of people, I give a lot of talks to business schools like this, and a lot of young people ask, saying, what's your advice for me? I said, I have no advice. Who am I to give you advice? But I must tell you, if I had an option, I would focus on building good self. Nobody teaches you how to build good self. Self that is rooted in truth, trust, love, inclusion, democracy, diversity. Self that is disciplined, analytical, creative, open, honest, ethical. I think self is the key. If I build a good self, which I unknowingly learned from Gandhi, I lived a very Gandhian life all my life. My needs are minimum. I don't do anything. I'm not a member of some golf club or this club or that club. I don't do anything. Okay. I never go shopping. My wife buys everything for me. Not that it is right or wrong. But I think the key is to really understand Gandhi in many ways and adopt things that you think are right for you to adopt. We have lost Gandhi completely. We are all into optimizing power and profits and not values and wisdom. And it all depends on where you get your happiness. What is the meaning of life? What kind of journey you want to take? What is fulfilling to you? So it's up to yourself. I don't know whether I've answered the question.
Can you, since, when I read your Harvard Business Review piece, I was struck by how prescient you were in terms of seeing the potential value of technology for the solving wicked social problems. And something we all take for granted today, almost as a fact, is a telephone is not a luxury product. A telephone is something that actually has a lot of more value probably for the poor than it has for the rich.
I was convinced of that.
Yeah, but that was not a common view at all in the 80s. And so your capacity to sort of look ahead and see what is around the corner, can you give us a couple of insights in terms of where technology is going and where you think, what are some of the things around the corner?
As I said earlier, technology today is basically helping us to democratize knowledge, decentralize implementation. So I am empowered to do things I want to do. And I don't need to wait for somebody to tell me. It was not possible 20 years ago. And third, it is demonetizing services. Telecom is today free, almost free. I could make video call all over the world all day, and it's almost free. Similarly, energy is going to be free in next 25 years. Similarly, transportation is going to be free in next 25 years. When the self-driven car becomes a reality in next 5-10 years, I won't need to own a car. Why should I own a car when I can just order a car, whichever car I want, to go wherever I want to go? So I won't need driver's license, parking garage, insurance. Ultimately, you won't need traffic lights in the world because all these cars will be able to find their own way. Millions of square feet of prime office space would be available all over. Just that little idea is going to transform this world. So over a period of time, education is going to be very inexpensive. Why do I need $200,000 to get an MBA? When I can go online and learn all about leadership and innovations and all that. Maybe I don't get a big certificate from Harvard, but I can learn 70–80% for $1,000. So I think everything is going to change. I don't need to go to doctor's office for some little thing. I can find on this what to do. Talk to doctor on phone and not drive half an hour to his office, sit there for an hour for a 5-minute appointment. That's what we do today. So in a sense, everything we do today is basically obsolete. You got to start with that. Okay. And say, how do I redesign this process? I say many times that we have 19th century mindset, 20th century processes, and 21st century technology and needs.
Okay, I think I'm hogging the airtime here. I really need to pay more attention to the audience.
Please.
Okay, Sanjay asks, I fully agree that ubiquitous digital inclusion is a great idea. This will require an economically sustainable model. How do you see the role of the current capitalist structures in supporting it?
I think we pay too much attention to capital, okay, because that's how we are trained, that money moves everything. It's not true. Of course, you need capital to do things, but if there are good ideas, capital will come. Capital always will come to good ideas. But then the profit has to be seen differently. What are you trying to optimize? Are you trying to optimize shareholder value, or are you trying to optimize something else? I normally ask only two fundamental questions. Is it good for planet or bad for planet? If it is good for planet, promote it. If it is bad for planet, stay out of it. Is it good for people or bad for people? If it is good for people, do it. I think the paradigm has to change from power and profit to planet and people. It's a tough call.
Do you have any views on, we have about 10 minutes left, so I'm going to almost make this like a lightning round.
Please.
Do you have any views on Elon Musk's bid to take Twitter private?
Well, more power to him. You know, that's all I can say. Who am I to comment? But, you know, I would like a clear understanding of the power of this kind of a platform. What do you want to accomplish with this platform? But time will tell. I don't get involved in too much of this, you know, rich people doing this and rich people doing that. I don't watch all that news. Okay, I'm not interested in it. Okay. I mean, you get the list of billionaires said this and billionaires said that. Whatever they say, it's in their interest. More power to them.
Do you support deglobalization?
So I think it is not black and white. It is not globalization and deglobalization. It is understanding of what to globalize, what not to globalize, what to localize. I don't need to globalize my toy. I can make a local toy. So the question is, in this process of globalization, we have gotten to a point, a Ganpati is also made in China. Now that's a little too much for me. Okay. So I think localization has to be the first priority. If I was to redesign economy, I would shift everything from from top down to bottom up. One. Two, I would focus on localization first. What is that the local people can produce? I would focus on small and medium scale industry to scale by networking and not set up huge plants everywhere. I would bring unorganized labor into the mainstream. These are all the ideas that we need for a circular economy. Today, it's all upside down. Okay. So people ask questions about globalization and deglobalization. It's not like that. Western mindsets works on black and white, compartmentalization. Indian mindset works on gray, shades of gray all the time. Okay. It is not this or that. Don't put me in a block just by looking at me, or the way I talk, or what I studied, or what I value. Okay. There's no need to put everybody in a box. So people immediately say democracy, dictatorship. Liberalization, not liberalization. Capitalist, socialist. No. That's not the way to look at the world. So that's my answer on localization and globalization and deglobalization.
With the rise of the gig economy and the democratization of knowledge, and we're hearing in the US that many people are leaving jobs and starting their own little businesses working from the home. Are we already getting towards your destination, even as we speak, because of these technologies? And I would not have imagined 10 years ago that we would have so many people who are self-employed or part of the gig economy. And that is, in a way, of saying it's like a small business. Each one is a small business, but they're held together by giant companies. So comment on that trend. I mean, is there something happening here that's fundamental?
There is something happening because, the tools of hyperconnectivity allow you to work differently. I had an office and I didn't go to office for 2.5 years. So I closed it. I can work from home. All my people work from home, whosoever I deal with. Okay. It was not possible 20 years ago. I think COVID expedited that process of working on videos. COVID also expedited the process of connecting to people from all over the world. Okay. So I think going back to this thing I said earlier, this is an instrument to empower me. I can decide when I want to work, where I want to work on, how I want to work. Not that it is good for everybody. Somebody who's making sandwich has to be at the sandwich shop. Fine. Okay. So I think the trend is to really empower people to do their own thing. I mean, look at all the laws today. I mean, in India, as an example, or any other country, a teacher has to have certain degree to teach. Come on, give me a break. 8th grader can teach 2nd grader. Why does he have to have a degree? Why should he be, all teachers today? You see, at the end of the day, education is all about motivation, time, and content. If I'm motivated, if I'm willing to devote time, there is enough content available. Who decided it should take 4 years to get a degree? Why do we take 4 years to get a degree? All of these things are going to change. We today give certificate on exit. I would like to give certificate when you enter and not exit after 4 years. So hyperconnectivity is transforming everything, slowly but surely. And you will see more and more people, working from home, free hours, at their comfort, different kind of jobs will be created. It's going to happen. It's happening already.
There's another question about how do we get from here to there? Do things have to get much worse before they can get better in the sense that you describe it? And will there be more economic accidents, wars, and so on as part of the journey for getting from here to there?
I hope not. I wish we could prevent more wars. I hope we can prevent more economic crisis. I hope we have learned from our mistakes. I hope we can be more alert, and we don't need a crisis to bring about a change. Sometimes people say if there is Third World War, then there'll be a significant change. That's the wrong way to think. We can bring about generational change. There is enough in human intelligence to think and prevent catastrophe. But we need different kinds of leaders. Today's world does not have the kind of leaders we need. Today's world leaders are too selfish, too narrow-minded, based on what is good for them and their country. You don't have the leaders that think of humanity. Leaders who have a broader vision of the world. Leaders who think more about collaboration, cooperation, communication, and co-creation, and not about command and control. You look at all the leaders, they are only into command and control. I'm the best. Okay. I mean, when leaders have their pictures all over the world, every program, they are pretty insecure people. Okay. In India, even the ID has Prime Minister's picture. Come on, give me a break. What kind of a nation are we trying to build? Okay. But that shows the kind of leadership we have created in the world.
With about 30 seconds left, I think what you're saying is the world needs another Gandhi.
I think so. Or Mandela, or Martin Luther King, or Buddha, okay, or many others. But those kinds of people who believe in sacrifice, who believe in public good, who have no vested interest. They are not interested in getting elected. They don't need votes next time. They don't lie. They don't cheat. They don't divide. They promote truth, trust, love. Hard to do. It's not easy. They can talk about it. I mean, today's leaders lie through their teeth and they have no problem. Public has no problem also.
Well, the subtitle to your book is a call for action. And I think in the last minute, what we heard was a call for action. We're going to have to leave it at that, Sam, because unfortunately our time is up. But I want to say that, I did not read all the comments which were thanking you for your service and your contributions over the years.
I just do whatever I think is right to do.
No, but I think we all appreciate all the things you've done for your India and for the world. And we wish you good luck. And I think we heard your call. And thank you for writing the book. And thank you for sharing your thoughts with us this evening.
Anytime, if you want to have a conversation, I'm available.
Okay.
Because I want to learn from all of you also. When I give a talk, I learn from questions and other comments, and I don't have all the answers. So many times people ask me a question, I remind them, I say, look, I don't have all the answers. But I'm with you, we'll find answers. But I'm clear on the larger goal. How we'll get there, I don't know. It's a long journey. And I may not see in my lifetime, a change. Because I'm 80-year-old. Change may take 20 more years and I may not be around. That's okay. That doesn't stop me from planting seeds.
True, true. And you planted some seeds that have grown into mighty oaks in India. So thank you. Thank you, Sam, again.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you to our audience. Thank you, Sandrine, for making all the arrangements.
Yes, Sandrine,
and we hope,
thank you.
And we look forward to seeing all of you at our next event. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.